This is absolute insanity to me that I have to say this out loud to a group of adults, but you don't have to lie to get your way. Okay, you do not have to pay or buy into the wedding tax. And yes, I'm aware that anytime I use this phrase in a title or in a video, it inherently stirs up some feelings in some people. But the question here is it the wedding industry's fault or is it your fault? We're coming out guns blazing this week, but if you do not want to pay the wedding tax, then you need to stop buying into the system that perpetuates it. Hi, my name's Jamie. I'm a wedding planner, and I've helped hundreds of thousands of couples plan their weddings on a budget, have less stress, and actually enjoy the process. Don't believe me? Go check out my channel. I've got hundreds of videos. I individually help couples go through something called the master plan, where I'm live with them every single month, teaching them, helping them through their wedding planning process, cracking the code, making sure they can stay on budget and do what works best for them. But if you don't want to go look around at all those right now, you just want the quick and dirty, here is how you can save money on your wedding without cheating the system or lying to people about it. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, there is this idea out there that there is something called the wedding tax. And I'm gonna try really hard not to do finger quotes every time I say wedding tax. Because for me, having been in this industry for 7 years now, been making these videos for 5, it drives me absolutely bonkers when people are like, well, vendors just upcharge the heck out of things. And if you go look at the comments on my last wedding tax video, there are a couple circumstances where people genuinely felt as though they were taxed because they used the word wedding. That conversation is not currently up for debate, or I won't be entering into that debate necessarily right now because that'll get us off track, right? But there is this general perception that the entire industry is out to get you for all of your money. Like all of your pennies, you give them all to me, and then I'll make all of your dreams come true. It makes us sound like mythical witch doctors selling snake oil instead of helping you to put on an epic event. Here's the problem. You don't go to a Mercedes-Benz dealer and get really ticked when they charge Mercedes-Benz prices. If you do not want to pay any sort of wedding tax or obscene wedding amount, I did the finger quotes again, then stop going to the luxury car dealerships. Is my analogy still hitting right? Dear God, I hope so. What I'm trying to say is do not pay for anything that you do not ascribe any sort of value to. Don't go get a Benz if you don't want to make the payments. Before you get mad and get ragey in the comments, I plan budget weddings. This is what I do. I firmly believe that you can plan a wedding for $5,000, for $10,000, for $15,000 and still get an epic wedding day and save lots and lots of coin. But if you believe that you might accidentally find yourself at a Mercedes-Benz dealership without knowing it, here are 4 ways that you can avoid paying any sort of wedding tax whatsoever from the get-go. I had to work really hard to not do finger quotes in that moment. Step number 1, set a budget. Talk about it. Be upfront about it. Let your vendors know. Don't be afraid to shop around. Don't be afraid to ask for quotes. And don't be afraid to lead with, I've got $2,000 for this category. Is that something that you can help me with? And if they say no, you move on down the line because you do not need to be paying Mercedes-Benz prices if you do not have a Mercedes-Benz budget. I'm really working this analogy for all it's worth. And here's inherently what you will find on this journey of setting your budget and then sticking to it and talking about it openly with your vendors. You will be able to very quickly weed out the people that do not fit that budget. It will also show you that there are a ton of vendors out there that are willing to work at either a lower or a negotiated rate, or maybe they're new to this, they're new to the industry and they've got to get some events under their belt. So they're gonna say yes to a lesser cost. Now this could be either because you negotiated politely or you found someone that happens to work within your budget, but just by being honest and you telling the truth, you will find the right people that work best for your event. The second way that you can avoid the dreaded wedding luxury tax, let's call it that instead. That felt good. That felt right. The luxury tax, not the wedding tax, the luxury tax. Wait, am I having an epiphany before your very eyes? I am, because you can have a wedding, you just probably can't have a luxury wedding on a budget. So we need to kind of like reframe our thinking and our phrasing here. You can have a car, right? You can have a car at a very cheap budget. You just can't have a luxury car on a cheap budget, okay? But you also can't be mad if it doesn't have a seat heater and wood inlay. The second thing that you can do to avoid the dreaded wedding luxury tax is to think outside the box. And that can be stuff like your venue. Find something unique, find something different. Go to a park, go to a library, go to a community building. You can get married on the beach. You can get married on a cliff. You can get married at your local community center. You can get married at a church or a courthouse. There are a bunch of different options here, but if you go with a traditional hotel with in-house catering and really expensive rentals included and a big heavy hitting list of preferred and or required vendors, you are automatically pushing yourself into an upper echelon of costs that will inherently come with a white glove service and a higher ticket price. You can also think outside of the box when it comes to your decor. You can build, you can borrow, or you can barter. This takes time. This takes effort. This takes energy. This takes storage space in your home. But if you don't have the money, then you don't have the money. Areas that you could save could be a photo booth backdrop, maybe your centerpieces. Maybe you choose to DIY your table numbers, or you put together your own photo booth instead of hiring a vendor for that specifically. Maybe you have services that you're really good at and you could barter with someone else in a Facebook group. Or maybe there's someone in your life that just got married, or maybe you get connected with someone in a group or what have you that also has the same kind of things that you want that you can borrow and or rent from a person and give to them afterwards. Get outside of that mold of having to go through the traditional avenues to get some of these items to make sure that you can have an incredible wedding at the cost that you and your fiance can afford. You can also think outside the box with the wedding date itself. I will say it feels like off-season weddings are becoming less and less cheap in comparison to on-season weddings, especially because the two places I've lived now, California and Texas, the off-season is almost sometimes preferable in some locations because it's less hot. What is the off-season? If you're brand new to the wedding industry, most events I would say probably happen between like May and September, depending on where you're at weather-wise. And then off-season would be, well, I guess October is now considered in-season as well. See, this is where things get a little tricky. Off-season would probably be November through March. Like, that's when the weather's typically colder, but that could be more suitable in a place like, I don't know, Scottsdale, Arizona. Been there, done that, that's hot. But by selecting an off-season and potentially a Friday, Sunday, or even a weekday, you can find yourself saving a lot of money. But if you are committed to a Saturday, then you're gonna need to get a little creative with some of these other categories to make up for that cost specifically. And then one of my favorite categories for thinking outside the box is vendors. You do not have to hire a full-service catering staff. If I'm the first person to tell you that, I'm really sorry, but also I'm so glad you're here. I hope you subscribe and stick around because there's a whole lot of that here on this channel. Now, don't get me wrong. I love full service catering. I love them so much. They create such a nice experience for the guests and for the couple and for the vendors, and they're such a well-oiled machine, and it's so nice, but it's also really expensive and it doesn't work for everybody. So if that means that you are getting a taco cart, if that means that you are hiring a popsicle vendor instead of doing a full-blown dessert table or a 4-tier cake, great. What I love about this specifically is that it gives you and your fiance an opportunity to show off your personality. It gives you an opportunity to do something that's outside of the norm, that isn't traditional, and inherently you end up saving money as well. Now again, I'm not saying that a full service catering staff is going to charge you an exorbitant amount of money simply because they can, because you said it's a wedding. Again, that is a discussion for another day. But don't buy a Benz if you don't want to make the payments. Instead, opt for a trusty Toyota that will get you miles and miles down the road and still is a very sturdy vehicle. This analogy is like really hopefully hitting home for you guys because I'm not letting it go. The third way that you can avoid the luxury tax is to keep it simple. Do not buy into this idea that you have to have more. Do not buy into this idea that you have to have new. Do not buy into this idea that everything has to be perfect and shiny and unlike anything people have ever seen before. Also, do not buy into this idea that you have to have a big wedding for it to actually count. And I say that, and I was still the person that wanted a big wedding. I had 140 people. I could have easily had more than that, and my heart would have been happy. So, you know, you're gonna have to kind of wade through this with your fiance and figure out what works best for you guys. But so often we feel like 150 is the number. That's like weddings have 150 people. That's what you're supposed to do. No! Do you know how expensive it is to have 150 people at your event? And I recognize the hypocrisy of saying that when we had 140 people and I said I could do more. But we got creative in other areas because we prioritize. Again, we'll get to that in the next point. You can also keep the decor extremely simple. Minimalism is hot. Minimalism gives the eye an opportunity for like rest, and you can use the negative space to like create drama. There's so much that we can do with this. Do not feel like you have to be a maximalist on your wedding day, okay? Which is hard, because Pinterest is chock full of just so many ideas and florals coming out of people's nostrils. Like, so much is happening there. Don't buy into it, especially if you don't have the money to buy into it or the desire to. Keep your attire simple as well. If you're wearing a dress, keep it simple. The more lace, the more appliques, the more beading, the more expensive the alterations are going to be. In fact, we have a whole alterations guide. I'm going to go ahead and link it right up here if you want to check that out. That will give you a little bit of an idea of where your expenses could be going when it comes to alterations. Of course, variabilities do apply here, but the more extravagant the gown, the more layers, the more detail to it, the more complicated it will be to alter it afterwards. It's even in all of these details. It's getting a custom suit is going to be more expensive than just renting one. You also don't need to be doing a bunch of extras, like a photo booth. I love them, but you don't have to have one. Favors, you don't have to have them. Absolutely not. You don't have to have lawn games or board games or any of those extraneous things that you see people sharing, especially on social media, where you're like, I have to have that. If I don't have that, it won't count. Our wedding will be null and void. They won't let us sign our marriage license if we don't have lawn games. You kind of start to fall into this trap of like, oh no, our love is invalid if this is not the event that we host. And I encourage you to sit with that. And the last way that you can escape the dreaded wedding luxury tax is to prioritize. And when you get stressed out, come back to that list. Sit down with your fiance. This is something that we do in our course. This is something we do in the master plan with you guys, and I go over this with you in our live calls as well. In fact, we have an entire spreadsheet dedicated to this that we treat like a speed test, where you can be like, that's super important, that's not important, just boom, 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 all the way down. And if you don't know what the term is, then it's probably not important, right? But you need to sit down and talk about what you're most excited about. And also give yourself space and grace to be surprised by what you figure out that your priorities are. Maybe you get partway through this and you go, oh, the dress is more important than I thought. Or wow, I didn't think I'd want to get hair and makeup done, but I think I really, really do. And make adjustments accordingly. Of course, this is why having the initial list to operate off of gives you guys like something to like look at, focus on, strategize over, a list of priorities of what's most important to you too. Now, practically speaking, how do you do this? Each of you pick the top 3 things that you feel like will be the most important to you. It could be guest experience, your experience, could be the food, it could be entertainment, it could be attire. Just pick a handful of things. Photography, videography, maybe having a planner is really important to you. Whatever that happens to be, write those down and then book accordingly. This should probably be point number 2, because really right after your budget, you should be prioritizing. But sometimes if I come out too early in the video with the feels, people leave me. So now that you've stuck around this long, we really need to talk about this, because frankly, you can have 2 of the 3 following. You can have fast, you can have well done, and you can have inexpensive or cheap, if you will. You can have it fast and cheap, but it might not be well done. You can have it fast and well done, but it sure as heck ain't gonna be cheap. So if we do not want to subscribe to the wedding industry's tax that they put on luxury events and tax, I even hate saying it like it's a real thing, whatever, not the argument we're having today, then you will need to take your time to look around for something that is well done and inexpensive. But if you want it done quickly, or if you want it done inexpensively, there is going to be something that you're going to need to sacrifice here. And as we all know, that's not shocking information. That's just the way of life. I drive a 20-year-old vehicle because I do not want to be making a car payment that is $600 a month. That's the priority that I've made. That's the priority that my husband and I have made. But I'm certainly sure as heck not mad when I'm now riding down the street in a G-Wagon, because this is a choice that we have made to prioritize our finances accordingly. And this is no knocking on anyone that has a G-Wagon. I think they're gorgeous, and I think one day I'd love to like have a fancy new car, right? But ours is a 7.3, and it's the million-mile engine, and it's never gonna go anywhere, and blah, 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 and like people stop us. Dude, excursions are like, there's like a cult following around them. But enough about me. I want you and your fiance to have an incredible wedding day. Please do not fall victim to this idea that the industry's out to get you. There are so many vendors that would love to work with you wherever you're at, meet you at your price point. If you can't find somebody, if you give yourself enough time, you can DIY or get creative or borrow or barter or build it yourself. There are so many options. Do not fall into this idea that you have to have a luxury wedding for it to count, because I'm here to tell you that is not the case. I feel like I need to take a deep breath. We all collectively need to take a deep breath after that one. So that's all we have for this week's video, guys. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you need additional support, if you feel like you are drowning in this, because this is a lot, and I talk fast in these videos, and you're like, hey, is there like an order to your video? No, there's no order to these videos, but there is an order over in the course that I do live monthly calls in, and I'd love to support you, and I'd love to make sure that you feel heard and seen, and we've got this amazing community we're all in the same mindset. Like, we're not buying into this crap. We're not doing it. We are going to plan epic, amazing events, and we're going to love every step of it, and we're going to save money, and we're not going to be stressed. Come join us over in the master plan. If you haven't done so already, jump on down there, hit the like button, and subscribe to this channel for more tips and tricks for the modern day bride. And until next week, bye guys.